The stage is now set for a Western Conference Finals between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Two elite defenses, two rising superstars, and one ticket to the NBA Finals on the line. In this video, I'm breaking down everything you need to know, from the swing factors, the advantages each team brings, and the one X-Factor matchup that I believe could quietly decide it all. During the regular season, Minnesota and OKC faced off 4 times and split the series evenly at 2 games apiece. But just like in the other series that I've covered so far, those regular season matchups don't actually tell us as much as you'd think. We actually didn't get a single game where both teams had their fully healthy starting fives. The closest we came to that was Minnesota rolling out their healthy starting five, while the Thunder were missing Chet Holmgren. On the other side of the coin, that matchup happened on December 31st, and because of that, we don't really get to know a whole lot about the Timberwolves either. At the time of that meeting, Minnesota was still trying to find their footing. They were sitting 17-15, struggling offensively, and they frankly couldn't get anything clicking. But from that point forward, things got even murkier in their head-to-heads. Randall didn't play in the final 3 games, and Rudy Gobert was out for 2 of them as well. So if you're looking at these regular season results hoping for clues, you're really out of luck. What we can take into this series, though, is everything we've seen from them so far in their playoff runs. And from that alone, it is clear we're in for an all-time great battle. On one side, you've got the modern-day Michael Jordan with Anthony Edwards, and on the other, the modern-day Kobe Bryant in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It's a duel of rising superstars. The winner is not only going to secure a spot in the NBA Finals, but they'll also be cementing the legacy of one of the league's smallest market teams, embarking on a run that will long be forgotten. Now that we've set the table, we need to dive into the individual matchups, the battlegrounds where the series will ultimately be decided. Starting with how I think the Thunder will try to defend Minnesota, as here is how I think the assignments are going to shake out. Lou Dort on Anthony Edwards, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on Mike Conley, Isaiah Hartenstein on Rudy Gobert, Jalen Williams on Julius Randle, and Chet Holmgren on Jaden McDaniels. Let's start with the headline matchup, Lou Dort guarding Anthony Edwards. This is going to be a heavyweight clash. Trying to contain Ant is one of the most thankless tasks in basketball. But if there's anybody in the league who is built for it, it's probably Dort. He's got the strength, foot speed, and defensive instincts to really make Edwards work for everything. And that's the key. He's not going to shut him down, but he can wear him down. The bigger question is, what kind of coverages will the Thunder be throwing at Ant? We saw the Lakers throw the entire kitchen sink at him in round 1, sending blitzes and doubles constantly, forcing him to become a playmaker, which he actually handled surprisingly well. If Oklahoma City go with the similar approach, they'll have to be a lot sharper because Edwards has proven that he can read the floor and make the right passes. But if they opt to defend him one-on-one, there will be games and moments where that simply won't matter because Anthony Edwards is that good. But the Thunder have a deep supporting cast of very capable defenders. They can rotate guys like Caruso, Cason Wallace, and even J-Dub onto Edwards, giving Dort a breather. That kind of depth gives them a luxury that most teams will never have, as they're able to constantly keep fresh legs on the Wolves star. Ideally, someone who can match or exceed his energy basically for the whole game. And that is huge, because the number one thing Edwards can't afford to do in the series is to get physically and mentally tired, leading to turnovers. Oklahoma City thrive in transition, and they destroyed the Denver Nuggets off turnovers in games 2 and 7 in that series. And if Edwards gets careless, something that he is prone to doing, the Thunder will feast. Now, as for the Julius Randle matchup, I've got Jalen Williams on him instead of Chet Holmgren. And the reason for that is simple: strength. Randle is one of the most physical offensive players in the league. He loves backing guys down, using his big frame to create separation, and I just don't think Holmgren is built to deal with that kind of physicality, especially over the course of a 7-game battle. J-Dub, on the other hand, is sneaky strong, incredibly versatile, and an incredibly underrated defensive player. His offensive game can come and go, but his defense, especially especially against Denver, was a constant. And quickly speaking to his versatility, there was a stretch in the regular season where they were without both Chet and Hartenstein, and guess who played center? That's right, Jalen Williams. And he was great at it. His versatility on defense basically never gets spoken about, but he has a real argument to be one of the best defensive players in the league. And for all those reasons, I think he's a much better fit for the assignment. That then forces Holmgren to be on Jaden McDaniels or Rudy Gobert, but given Chet's quicker feet than Hartenstein, I'd prefer to have him on McDaniels. Jaden McDaniels is a streaky shooter and someone who's not likely to punish Chet off the dribble. Holmgren's length should be enough to just contest the shots, and if McDaniels isn't hitting them, then the Thunder might even start to experiment with Chet playing a more roaming role, sagging off to help contain Edwards and Randle on the drive. Physically, both McDaniels and Holmgren are long and wiry, so there shouldn't be too much concern about mismatches there. It's a smart place to stash Chet defensively without sacrificing the rim protection. Now let's flip the script. How are the Timberwolves going to match up on Oklahoma City? Here's how I see it. McDaniels on SGA, Edwards on Jalen Williams, Randle on Holmgren, Gobert on Hartenstein, and Conley on Dort. In some of their regular season meetings, the Wolves did have Edwards guarding Shea, but I think that is too risky in the playoffs, for many reasons. First of all, you do not want Ant in foul trouble, especially with how whistle-friendly SGA can be at times, especially when he's going downhill. Second of all, you do not want to burn him on defense. He's carrying such a huge offensive load already that burning all his energy trying to defend SGA could be a huge mistake. For stretches in crunch time, sure, let Edwards have a couple of possessions on SGA, but he absolutely should not be the primary matchup. It's also worth noting that Edwards is just one technical foul away from a suspension, so if he was guarding Shea and got frustrated with a foul, saying a little bit too much to a ref, it could see him miss an entire game. So by putting McDaniels on Shea instead, Minnesota can throw a bigger, longer body at him while still preserving Ant's energy and focus for offense. McDaniels may not be the traditional point guard defender, but Shea isn't a guard either. He operates more like a wing, and the length of Jaden McDaniels and his lateral movement could be good enough to give Shea a different look. Then I've got Anthony Edwards defending Jalen Williams, which is still a tough cover, but one where the strength and athleticism of Edwards should allow him to contest shots and keep Williams honest. Julius Randle on Chet is an interesting wrinkle. Randle may not be known for his defense, but with Chet's more perimeter-oriented play, Randle should be able to keep up while also using his strength and size to try and keep Chet off the glass. And it's also worth noting that even though Randle isn't typically known as a defensive player, he's actually been pretty good on that end through the playoffs, defending guys like Luka and LeBron at a pretty high level. Then, Gobert and Hartenstein remains the natural fit, and Conley on Dort is a low-risk assignment given Dort's limitations as a scorer, as it'll allow them to keep Mike Conley on the floor. Then the bench is going to matter as well. Guys like Dante DiVincenzo and Nickeil Alexander-Walker could also see some stints guarding SGA, bringing some fresh legs and a bit of physicality coming off the bench. Ultimately though, I expect this to be a defensive grind of a series. Denver let SGA get way too comfortable in the mid-range, pretty much playing zone coverage for the entire series, allowing him to either get to his spots or draw a crowd and make the correct pass. And even though the zone was pretty effective at times, it doesn't matter, because if you give a guy the same look for basically a whole game, he's eventually going to pick you apart, especially if he's anything close to the level of player that SGA is. I don't see Minnesota being nearly as generous. They are a much better defensive team overall, and I expect them to throw the kitchen sink at Shea. I think we're in for a lot of 95-94, 105-103 type playoff games. Slow, half-court slugfests that feel more like 90s basketball than the up-and-down style that we often see in today's game. And while the stars, Edwards and SGA, are rightfully going to dominate the headlines, for me, there is one X-Factor matchup flying under the radar that I believe has the potential to decide the series. And it's Julius Randle versus Jada. These two are both the secondary scoring options for each team, who both have had their share of playoff struggles. While Randle has actually been excellent excellent in this postseason, his previous 2 appearances in the playoffs were not as good, and there is no guarantee that he's going to continue at this level. And for J-Dub, while his defense and playmaking have shined, his scoring has been wildly inconsistent once again. If one of these 2 can get hot while the other goes cold, that could absolutely swing a game, or even a series. Imagine a night where Williams goes 3 of 16, while Randall hits 5 threes. You'd probably bet Minnesota to win that game 9 times out of 10. But flip the script. If Randall has an off night, turning into a black hole on offense, while Williams is everywhere, scoring, defending, disrupting in the passing lanes, and getting out and running for electric finishes, that's a recipe for a Thunder win. These are the margins where the series could be won or lost. Everyone is going to be keeping their eyes on Edwards versus SGA, and rightfully so, because that's going to be cinema, and obviously a big deciding factor as well. But do not sleep on the secondary stars. In a series this tightly contested, it might just be a battle between Randall and Williams that ends up deciding a crucial game in this series, and ultimately sending their team to the finals. Now let's take a deeper look at the strengths of each team, and then explore how that could be used to exploit the opposition, because that's really where this series between OKC and Minnesota is going to be decided. Starting with OKC, it's impossible not to begin with their defense, because what they're doing right now is nothing short of historic. The guys over at Nerd Sesh, who do a great job with stats, said an almost remarkable stat about the Thunder's defense that I have to share. In their first 10 games of this playoff run, they've actually forced more turnovers than any team since 1975. That isn't just elite, that's all-time great. And the reason why the turnover numbers were so high in the 70s was because the pace was through the roof and teams were simply not great at limiting their turnovers. So what this stat is really telling us is that no team in NBA history has ever been better at generating turnovers than this Thunder team. They're forcing 18.3 turnovers a game, which is directly leading to 24.7 points off turnovers. That's a massive advantage, no matter who they're facing, because when a defense is directly fueling your offense like that, the game can tilt in your favor in a blink of an eye. And it's so crucial for a young team as well, as in Game 7, although the Nuggets started well offensively and the Thunder were missing some shots to begin the game, once they were able to get a couple of steals, which led to wide open dunks, they got the crowd behind them and it built their confidence. The fact that this Thunder team is so young really isn't that big of a concern when you look at just how great of a defensive team they are, as defense is something that easily carries, while offense is a lot harder to replicate. But given the fact that they get so much offense from their defense, their youth and lack of experience really isn't that big of an issue compared to other teams. But what makes all of this a lot more impressive is how they're not just elite at forcing you into mistakes, they're also elite at avoiding them. OKC currently leads the playoffs in assist to turnover ratio at 2.34 and is turning the ball over on only 10% of their possessions, which again is the best mark in the postseason. So if you've got a group that puts extreme pressure on you defensively and isn't giving you any freebies back the other way, that is a nightmare for anyone. And when they get going, as we saw in Game 7 against Denver, it's not just about efficiency, it's about momentum. That's when you start to feel like the game is getting away from you. And if you do not instantly stop the bleeding, you might as well just go back to the locker room, because OKC will absolutely run you out of the building. A huge reason why they've been able to play with such a poise and confidence has been the addition of Alex Caruso. He's been remarkable since his arrival, and in Game 7, that was a perfect snapshot of his value. He only played in 26 minutes, but that might have been the most impactful 26 minutes of the postseason. He finished with 11 points, 3 assists, and 3 steals. Solid numbers on paper, but that doesn't even begin to capture just how much he influenced the game. He brought the veteran calm to the team, especially when things were getting out of hand early in the first quarter. The one 3-pointer that he did hit might have seemed minor on the box score, but that one shot really sparked everything. He made the first 3-pointer of the game for the Thunder, and after that, the confidence spread across the floor. He even spent big moments on Nikola Jokic, which was a genius genius adjustment in itself, allowing for the bigs to be roaming in the paint, forcing anybody but Nikola Jokic to beat them. And as you can tell, it worked. Alex Caruso continues to prove why he's one of the best defensive guards in the game today, and why he's the kind of championship caliber player who just elevates every single team he's been a part of. But now, let's flip the script and look at the Minnesota Timberwolves. Right away, I have some concerns about how they're going to handle OKC's turnover pressure. Even going back to the Nuggets series, there were early warning signs. The Wolves rank as the 18th worst team in the league for turnovers, and the Nuggets were right around the same mark. Then, when you look at games 2 and 7 in that series, when the Nuggets got loose with the ball, and the Thunder absolutely blew them out because of it. And that is the thing, because if the Wolves do that to Oklahoma City, it's going to be the same result. You're basically handing over the keys and walking away. You've got no shot. So for Minnesota, ball security has to be priority number one. Every pass has to be made with intent. Every possession must be valued, because there is no room for sloppiness in this series. One of the biggest questions, though, is whether the Timberwolves can actually overcome that relentless defense by potentially leaning into their own shot creation, mainly from Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle. The answer to that is going to depend entirely on how the Thunder choose to defend Edwards. Do they send the blitz, trying to force the ball out of his hands, similar to what the Lakers attempted to do, trying to take advantage of his lesser playmaking ability, or do they just dig in and trust their endless supply of great point of attack defenders and just continue to throw wave after wave at him, trying to wear him down and make him settle for tough contested jumpers? So far in the playoffs, Minnesota's offense hasn't quite looked like the one we saw to close the regular season, and a big reason for that has been their cold shooting from deep. If they want a real shot in the series, they are going to have to rediscover that outside stroke. If Oklahoma City Thunder loads up on Edwards, then the Wolves' outside shooters absolutely need to rise to the occasion. That means Dante DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels, Mike Conley, and Naz Reid all need to be consistent from range. That is the only way you're going to be able to stretch out Oklahoma City's defense and give Anthony Edwards any real breathing room if they're playing him like that. Now, to be fair, Minnesota's defense has also been outstanding. It's just not quite to the level of the Thunder's in terms of generating chaos, as they lean on their rebounding more, limiting you to one shot. And that could be good enough to cause the Thunder some offensive struggles, especially when you consider that Oklahoma City's offense isn't exactly top tier. This is where things start to even out a little bit, because both teams do have great defenses. They both heavily rely on one superstar to create shots, but after that, there is a noticeable drop-off for both sides when it comes to individual scoring. It reminds me a lot of the Rockets versus Warriors first round series. Two teams whose offensive systems weren't anything to write home about, as it really came down to which defense could suffocate the other more effectively. And in that case, the Warriors won out, because even though Houston's defense was great, Golden State just had enough shot makers to get the job done. We're looking at a very similar dynamic in this series. And that's why I think we'll see games where the Thunder blow out Minnesota, because the Wolves get a bit careless with the ball and turn it over, as the Thunder's defense will likely be swarming like hornets, getting out in transition, and pouring on points in a hurry. But there's also going to be games where Minnesota locks in, values their possessions, dominates on the glass, and forces the Thunder into late shot clock tough looks. In those stretches, especially if Edwards or Randle can get hot, the Wolves will feel like they're in control. There's going to be a real push and pull in this series. Momentum is going to swing, and in the end, it comes down to who you trust to sustain that level of execution against the best defenses in basketball. And for me, I said it before Game 7 between Denver and Oklahoma City. I believed that if OKC could beat the Nuggets, then I would finally feel comfortable in saying that they have enough to win it all. They are ready for the moment. And well, they did. So I'm standing by my take. I'm picking the Thunder to win this series in 6, but I could easily see it going to 7. I just think that their defense is going to be more disruptive to Minnesota's offense, and with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander getting more help than Edwards offensively, potentially seeing some big games from Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren, I trust the Thunder to generate enough enough consistent offense to win 4 out of 7 games. This has the markings to be an absolute classic, and I still can't quite believe that either Edwards or SGA is going to be representing the West in the NBA Finals, and most likely going up against either Tyrese Halliburton or Jalen Brunson. And if you want to hear who I've got coming out of the East between the Indiana Pacers and the New York Knicks, then you can watch that full breakdown right now.